Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Closing Strong. We are just 40 days and less away from this election, but people are already voting across the country. Again, I'm Tara McGowan, founder and publisher of Courier, joined by my good friend and hopium purveyor, Simon Rosenberg. Simon, how are you feeling this close?
I do feel like somehow this week everything got even more intense. Like it's really here now. People are voting. We all knew that once people started voting, we would feel this way, but we feel this way. Like the election's here. And, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, we're in good shape, but as I like to say, we're winning the election, but we haven't won it yet. And we have to now go out and win it. So I'm feeling good, Tara. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, you're out there talking to folks. We've got a great show today, by the way, two amazing guests. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have incredible conversations for everybody. We talked to Julie Chávez Rodríguez, the campaign manager for the Harris Walz campaign, and our good friend Ben Wikler, who is the chair of Wisconsin Dems, to talk about what's happening in that state on the ground. So really, really a very campaign, grassroots organizing centric episode for everyone of how things are feeling on the ground in the states that are going to decide this election. It's really exciting. And I feel good. I feel the intensity. I do feel the intensity. You get to the point where there is stuff that everybody can be doing every single day. And then there's also moments where you have to be like, okay, like we have a very finite amount of days, amount of time. It does come down to math. Where can you put your best resources in terms of your time and energy? Where can our teams put that energy? And it's intense. You just can't really come up for air at this stage. We just don't have time.
Yeah, in my hopium community, you can really feel it. I mean, the donations to the candidates we've endorsed have increased dramatically. We've seen a lot more comments and people engaging, also more nervousness. And I want to remind everybody that part of the slogan at Hopium is that we do more and worry less, right? And we all need to do a lot of that. And then we need to all do a lot more and worry a lot less in the next 39, 40 days. But it's exciting. My quick take on where things are is that the polling continues to show nationally that the vice president has a 2, 3, 4 point lead. We're in stronger shape in the battleground states. We've seen consistent strong polling in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, getting us to 269. And then we had this big development in Nebraska this week where the Republicans' effort to change the rules that would take away that blue dot, as it's called, in Nebraska failed. And so we're leading in that blue dot. We should win. That should be blue again, which gets us to 270. And then we've got to go then do the rest of those states, what we're now calling the Sun Belt, which I don't totally love that phrase, but those are all competitive races. But there was one really major development in the national election in the last 10 days, which is this meltdown of Mark Robinson and the North Carolina GOP. This is a must-win state. There is no Trump map without North Carolina. And the polling suggests there that we have a modest lead even before the Mark Robinson effect is really felt on the ground. I think North Carolina has now gotten much harder for Donald Trump, which makes his map to 270 much harder. And we've continued to see very strong polling for our Senate candidates. I know there's a lot of worry about John Tester, but the Senate Democrats feel that he's holding and still in competition. And then Sherrod Brown is continuing to lead in Ohio. So on balance, I would much rather be us than them. And as we're going to talk about in this episode, I think we have a modest lead and our ability to close strong is much greater than theirs. We've got more volunteers, more money, more intensity, and much bigger crowd sizes than the other side. And so, I feel like, I would much rather be us than them 40 days out.
There's no question about it. It's just, now it's the time to make sure that everybody talks to everybody who's not as tuned in, who's not as engaged, has those conversations with them. My friend Dan Pfeiffer had a great newsletter out this week, out of his newsletter, The Message Box, about ways to talk to your friends who are not very politically or civically engaged about this election. It's not really about folks deciding between candidates at this stage. It's about whether they're going to decide to vote or not. And so those conversations are so critical and have to be happening. And they're the most effective when they come from friends and neighbors and colleagues. And so making sure that you're thinking about who are those folks and what conversations can you be having or what can you be posting on your social media, frankly, that you'll just never know who it impacts or whose mind it might change or who it might motivate to actually be a part of this moment and this movement and this campaign. So we can actually truly end Donald Trump's political career. Wouldn't that feel really lovely? After all of these years. I've been thinking actually a lot lately about how I started working against this man to keep him out of politics and out of office in 2015 when he decided to run in the primary, in the Republican primary. And, a lot of folks didn't take him seriously at that stage. And now he lives rent free in all of our brains. And it's horrifying. It's a living nightmare. It has been. We got him out of office once, very proudly so. And this will be the last time we have to do it. He said that this past week, right? When asked if he would run again if he did not win this election, he said no definitively. And there was a great Harris campaign ad that just played that clip.
If you're not successful this time, do you see yourself running again in 4 years?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
It's just really great to hear that we could actually be done with this man and all of his cronies around him and be able to embrace and keep the politics of hope and joy and promise and progress that the Harris-Walz campaign has really brought to the conversation and to the country.
And I'll end with this is that, we didn't know how the campaign was going to evolve. And I think that what to me has been arguably the most impressive thing they've done is they have just stayed unbelievably focused on these basic, economic discussions about restoring us as a party of opportunity. I mean, I have this big theory that part of what happened with Biden is that during COVID, we got on the other side of opportunity with a lot of voters. We became the shutdown Democrats. And Harris needed to get back on the right side of opportunity and upward mobility, helping people get by, not just get ahead. And they've done an amazing job at this. And she's now, depending on the poll, in the FT poll 2 weeks ago, she was actually ahead of Trump on the economy. But the Washington Post headline this week was Trump's advantage on the economy is evaporating. I will tell you that if she gets into positive territory in the economy, there's no way Donald Trump can win this election. This is the only thing that he really had going for him. And the campaign is in the process of taking it away. And I'm really proud of them.
Absolutely. And, this show is called Closing Strong because we want to close strong. I'm very grateful, Simon, that you also participated in a big event we had this past week that I want people to check out because you and Tom Bonnier had a conversation with Maria Cordona about the state of the race and digging in on a lot more of these issues. People should look it up on our Courier's YouTube to be able to watch that conversation. I had the great honor of interviewing our forever speaker, in my opinion, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and talked about this. And she, our conversation with Ben Wikler later in this episode, he brought up her rules of the road for campaigns of being able to kind of leave nothing on the table that she mentioned in our conversation too. And that is the theme of this show. That is the theme of the next 5+ weeks. We have very little time. We all have to do everything. And what do you always say, Simon?
Do more, worry less. And in the next few weeks, we got to do a lot more and worry a lot less. That's the way that we stay sane. And it's also the way that we win.
That's right. All right, let's get into it.
We've got an amazing guest today with us, Julie Chávez Rodríguez, the campaign manager for the incredible Harris-Walz campaign. Julie, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Simon and Tara, for having me.
Listen, just basic question, right? You've been in this thing from the beginning. What a remarkable journey this has been. Things are, after the convention, the debate. I mean, it's been a remarkable run for all of you. Give us a sense of how you think things are going 40 days out. How does it feel? What are you looking forward to? Give us an update.
Yeah, well, 40 days out. One, it's great to be here with you all and to just first thank folks. I know we've seen a tremendous amount of energy, support, enthusiasm, over the last several weeks. And for us, that is really what we needed, right? The momentum going into this final 40-day stretch. But look, we're taking nothing for granted. We know and have always known that this is going to be a really close election, that we needed to have a strong organization in all of our battleground states to be able to reach the voters, the coalition that we know we need to reach right now. So we've been able to, fortunately, raise the resources to invest in our, 7 battleground states to make sure we are, deeply ingrained with strong offices and organizers on the ground, continuing to scale up our volunteer activities, our Canvas program, our phone banks, just really, turning on the entire apparatus that you two know very well will make the difference in close elections. And, we know this is going to be won or lost on the margins in these states. And that's where organization matters. But the enthusiasm has been great. It's been electrifying. It's been energizing. It's been, if I can steal your term, hopium, that I think folks were really, I think, needing to be able to go into, what has been, I think, a really exhausting time for many folks as they had to deal with the Trump administration initially, and so much energy and organizing and effort going into making sure that, everyone was doing what we could to protect the communities that so many of us were a part of or had been, fighting for so long. Then to, obviously the challenges of a pandemic and what that experience, meant for so many of us, then kind of back into another election. And so we're excited for the energy, the enthusiasm, this sort of spring of action, as we go into these final 40 days stretch. And I couldn't be more proud of our team and the campaign that we've built to date. But now is when it all matters.
Really does. It's getting so close, which is exciting and also really nerve-wracking after such a long slog. And I want to talk about kind of that sort of pivot. We talk a lot at Courier about turning vibes into votes, right? This is the time to do it. People are actually voting in some states across the country, which is so exciting. And that's going to keep happening over the next few weeks as early vote starts in a lot of states. And this is also where I feel like you start to really sort of drill down into very specific communities where there might be vulnerabilities or soft spots, et cetera, and do a lot more targeted organizing and communication. It happens the whole campaign, of course, but I'm really curious about how the campaign is working to translate really good vibes into votes among communities like Latino communities in states that are so critical like Nevada and Arizona and parts of Pennsylvania and other states, as well as young people, right, that are going to play an outsized role in this election, since for the first time really in our history, people between the ages of 18 to 40 make up the largest swath of the electorate, which is really exciting. And also we know that they need a lot more nudging sometimes, since it isn't something of habit to vote yet necessarily. So would love to just kind of hear how the campaign is focusing on very different constituencies and the ways that they're reaching out to them.
Yeah, well, one I'd say from turning, vibes into votes. I love that expression and phrase. But, early on, even in August, right, after we did have the vice president come to the top of the ticket, we, announced Governor Walz. We were in the middle of August, one of the hardest times to organize, period, let alone sort of in an election cycle, right? And we were able to, have tremendous rallies across all of our battleground states. And so just in that effort, fortunately, we had the organization to turn, so many of those folks, not just showing up for rallies, but then into shifts right away, and began, really that more aggressive volunteer recruitment process that has just continued to scale and continued to build at every turn. I think we quickly went from an organization that was, trying to kind of, find new ways of bringing people in, to then figuring out how does the net that we've, built actually capture, the kind of energy and sort of mobilization that we're seeing. So it has gone into a lot of the volunteer kind of organization that we've been building. But to your point, we have some, incredible constituency programs that we've been using to just make sure that, no matter who you are, no matter how you identify, you can really find a place for, ways in which you want to organize with our campaign. And that's both on the ground in person, through all of our field offices in our battleground states. And we have, I think it's 377 the last time I checked. I'm an organizer's organizer, so I don't end in zeros. But, just making sure that our field offices are in communities too, that, for the voters that we needed to reach. Maryvale was one of the first field offices we opened in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's in the heart of the Latino community. It had never seen a presidential, office so proximate to the voters and the communities and the neighborhoods that we needed to reach. The same with Philadelphia, and making sure, again, we had such, important presence early on. And we've, helped to make sure that that has translated into then the programming we're doing, the organizers we're hiring, who we're, sending to the doors, who we're recruiting for phone banks, and making sure that those are key entree points into the campaign, but not, in a way that folks feel sort of exclusive, or that, that they can't sort of really, find their own connection. And so I've been really proud with, we've called it our blended organizing model that we've brought in, because it really is trying to tap into the best of relational, digital, and then just, straight up, kind of grassroots organizing, which is a lot of the tradition that I was raised on, in a way that really is trying to meet voters where they are. Like you said, we're already seeing voters start to vote. So we have, no longer have to build for this, one day blitz where we try to get as many folks, as many volunteers out there talking to as many voters. But we have such a great opportunity to be able to engage folks through early vote windows and through early vote in person, vote by mail for some of our states, because it's become, complicated in some states that we're really cognizant of. But, all of this is really giving us an incredible opportunity to make sure that we are bringing as many folks out as possible, because it is going to be, again, a campaign that is won or lost on the margins, and turnout will matter incredibly. And this is when field and strong field programs will make a difference, on whether we win or lose.
Julie, one of the things we talk about in this show, it's called Closing Strong. And because the premise is this is a close election, but we need to close strong and to look at ways how best to close strong so that we can help all of you win this important election. I'm just wondering, we've got, as you were saying, we've outraised them. We have more volunteers than they do. We have an enthusiasm gap now where our side is more enthusiastic. We have bigger crowd sizes, right, than the other side, which is, we all know how important that is. How are you thinking about the close now? I mean, you've laid out some of it, but is the vice president going to be going into all 7 battleground states every week? What are you going to be doing with the vice president? I mean, just talk a little bit about your thoughts about how we close strong and really and push this vote from where it is today to a place where we win.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get ahead of any travel announcements, of course,
Yeah.
but, just in terms of, I think, key moments that we have between now and Election Day, we have, of course, the vice presidential debate that's coming up on October 1st, which will be another important opportunity to be able to really show voters the choice that's in front of them, right? We have, the Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, who continue to really be focused on the future, continue to lay out real plans, actual plans, not concepts of plans, for lowering costs for families, for addressing the issues that we know voters care most about, versus, Trump and Vance, who, one, continue to really focus on hate and division in so many ways, but also, the Project 2025 that their allies have laid out is an extremely risky proposition for voters. When you look at, the kind of control that and unprecedented power that it would give to a president, take reproductive rights as one example, laying out that they would even monitor pregnancies and women in that way. I can't even imagine how you do that, actually, but what life would be like in that kind of instance, eliminating the Department of Education. So we're going to make sure that, voters continue to see the choice, and that is a very clear proposition for them as we go into this final stretch. We'll, of course, have, all of our principals out in the battleground states. I know Governor Walz and Mrs. Walz continue to cover so much real literal territory for the campaign as they're out in different parts of our battleground states. I was really impressed with Mrs. Walz. I had a chance to do an Educators for Harris Walz event with her in Phoenix, Arizona, I think just last week. And from there, she was then, driving to Kingman, Arizona, which is, not a super Democratic friendly county or area of the state. She had over 115 people, turn out for her event. Then from there, driving to Flagstaff for another event. Then from there on to Vegas. So just really, we are making sure, again, we're not taking anything for granted, that we're getting into the red counties within our states, even if that means knowing that we're likely not going to win, many of these counties, but we will, hopefully drive up, our vote share, drive down Trump's margins. And we know, in states like Nevada and Georgia, in North Carolina, especially in our rural areas and rural counties. That's what makes the real difference in an election. So you'll see, more of that, of course, continuing to get our surrogates out. We have been really fortunate that, as a party, folks have been so united and so ready to get out there and willing to be surrogates. And again, do day long trips where we have them up and down, all of the critical communities that we need to reach, and really, staying focused on what we know are core issues for voters right now, and not getting distracted by the continued lies and frankly just like extreme on extreme that we continue to see from Trump and Vance.
Yeah, and you touched on this, but something that's been really incredible, I think that your campaign has done really well, is this challenge of balancing making sure that voters are so aware of the incredibly high stakes of this election and the consequences of it, and carrying the joy and the enthusiasm. And it's been really just incredible to have both, because both makes everything easier and more joyful to do the work that has to be done. And we only have 1 minute left, so I want to just kind of build on the closing strong theme and question Simon asked, and we'd be remiss, because as a lifelong organizer, not to ask you, what can folks do? What should they do who don't live in these battleground states? What would you ask them to do with these last really 5 weeks and change we have left?
Definitely. Well, folks can get involved, and really, whether it's doing phone banking from the comfort of your own home, or finding, offices or ways to be able to connect, they can go to kamalaharris.com to be able to get involved and to be able to sign up. But we do have a strong, distributed phone bank program. We also have canvases that we'll be launching from what we're calling our surge state program. So states like California and New York and Illinois into our battleground states. So there will be opportunities to, for those of you that love knocking on doors like I do, I know sometimes folks are like, canvassing, really? And there's no better way to, learn about really or to get the pulse of the voters and the election than getting out to canvass. But, we have so many different opportunities. And also, as you mentioned, the joyful ones, just recently we had the opportunity to, have the vice president in conversation with Oprah Winfrey and so many of our, incredible grassroots leaders as well. And so, just really, there are so many different ways that folks can tap in, and, just hope that you all would, join our campaign today. We know that if we continue to work hard, work together, that we will continue to make history. And, in addition to there being so much at stake in this election, it is also an extremely historic one, and one that I know, kind of working together and working through your networks can continue to do together. So we look forward to having you all in the fight. And, as the vice president reminds us, when we fight, we win.
Julie, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. Now we are so excited to be joined by my friend and the man who has really put Wisconsin on the map, along with the amazing teams that he's built on the ground there over the past number of cycles, the one and only Ben Wikler. Ben, thank you so much for coming on Closing Strong with us.
Tara, Simon, thank you so much for having me on. This community is doing such amazing things to power the grassroots operation that's going to win this election up and down the ballot. So I'm fired up. We have 40 days to go. Holy smokes, this is it.
This is it. And this is not your first rodeo. So we want to dive in. Tell us, what does it feel like on the ground in Wisconsin, the state that we know is always, always too close for my nerves. I always have so much more faith and confidence having you and your team there. But what is it feeling like right now?
So it feels intense, to put it in a single word. Our side has explosive, propulsive energy. There's hope, there's joy. There are, thousands upon thousands of people coming to every major event with our principals. We had 10,500 people here for Harris. Last Friday, we had 16,000 something in the Pfizer Forum during the Democratic convention in Chicago. We had more people in Milwaukee than they had at the Republican convention at the event for Harris and Walz. So, and then in a field in Eau Claire in Northwest Wisconsin, we had like 13,000 people right after Walz became the nominee. And those crowd sizes are just one little glimpse of what we see across the board. We've had 60,000 people in Wisconsin sign up to volunteer. That by itself is 3 times Biden's margin of victory from 2020. We've seen surges of donations, which folks can get involved in at wisdems.org/donate. We've had so much activity and energy. And at the same time, we know that the right is seeing the same thing, and they're mobilizing and doubling down. They have a worse ground game, and ours is far superior, but they have a whole propaganda apparatus that is cranking out these far-right talking points 24/7. They're spending millions of dollars a week in Wisconsin on hideous TV ads, on mailers that are crowding everyone's mailboxes. So Democrats should recognize this election in Wisconsin, in the polls, it's within the margin of error, and we know that means it's within the margin of effort. This election is winnable if we do everything in our power, and that is what we have to do.
Ben, it's so exciting. I mean, first of all, I watched some of the rally in Madison, and my favorite part was when you came out, actually. How did that feel? I mean, have you ever spoken to a crowd like that before in your career?
So I have never had the experience of like walking on the long stage in
Yeah.
the midst of the crowd, like, Taylor Swift, and everyone's like got their glowing wristbands on and like cheering and jumping up and down, and like it was just unreal.
Your Taylor Swift moment, Ben. That was your Taylor
Yeah,
Swift
I mean,
I know.
moment.
I know.
this is like what it's like to be the opening act for the opening act for the opening act of Taylor Swift, the sound check guy going out
Yeah.
before Taylor Swift, but everyone's already in the arena, and the feeling that you get. I looked around that room. If everyone there recruits 2 people to vote, then that's more than the margin of victory from 2020 in Wisconsin. And I pointed that out to people. Like that room could win the election. And every gathering like that, and everyone sitting at home who thinks, I would be in that room. If everyone goes out and finds 2 folks to cast a ballot, then we win. And just knowing the superpower that is in everybody's hands, no wonder their LED wristbands were glowing so brightly at that moment, because it's like everyone's a superpower that can shoot energy beams out of their fist. Like that is how it felt to be there.
Well, that event, I just want to say on TV, just looked unbelievable. I mean, that was one of the most amazing events so far. I haven't seen all of them, obviously, but man, that was really inspiring.
Harris, lived in Madison when she was 4. So she has now come back and seen her childhood house. Maya Harris was there backstage. I was talking to her. She went and had just taken a look at her childhood house. It's a couple miles from where I live in Madison. This is, in a way, it's a homecoming. They were very young, so they don't have that many vivid memories, but they have all these photos of themselves. And now they went back to the same place that they were standing when they took those photos. This is home turf for Harris and for Walz. Walz lives in Minnesota. All these Minneapolis TV stations have viewers in Wisconsin, and there are Wisconsin stations that have viewers in Minnesota that cover Governor Walz, as much as they cover our amazing Governor Evers. And having that kind of the cultural kinship and the crossover and this familiarity, there's so many, especially folks in small towns across Wisconsin who have said to me, Tim Walz is like my dad. And there are dads who want to be like Tim Walz. I certainly want to show up for my kids like Tim Walz. And that creates this real sense that like this is the home team. People don't feel that way with JD Vance in the state of Wisconsin. They definitely don't feel that way with Trump. There's a real sense that we can win in a way that has a big we in it. It's not just that we're going to send them to the White House. It's that we're going to make sure that people who reflect the values of the families all across Wisconsin that want to be more free, that want our society to have more opportunity for everyone, that just want to respect people and stay out of their personal business, all of that can be reflected from the White House. And we have 40 days to do it if we do everything we can.
I love that, the hometown team. It feels like that everywhere too. That's the beautiful part about this ticket and this campaign. It's been so joyful to watch. On a less joyful note, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and landmines you guys are navigating to make sure. You talked about this a little bit with the propaganda machine that the right has in Wisconsin. You know that we at Courier have Up North News, 5 years and growing in the state. But of course, we got a much later start than right-wing media and their apparatus. Talk a little bit about the information wars and how they're playing out a little bit and the importance of that. And also, if you can, I saw a story that our team in Wisconsin on the ground reported on the other day about Wausau conservative mayor meddling a little bit with the ballot boxes. Can you talk a little bit about kind of these forces at play and how you guys are combating them?
Absolutely. So Marathon County in kind of north central Wisconsin, the biggest city there is Wausau, and the mayor, Doug Dinney, is a Republican who ran on anger about water bills going up because of PFAS pollution. So this is something that Democrats with the Inflation Reduction Act are funding cleanup of these chemicals. And Katie Rosenberg, the amazing mayor, had championed really taking on this pollution with forever chemicals. But then he ran this kind of campaign laser focused on those costs. He became mayor, and what is he doing with his power now? He's trying to stamp out people's access to the ballot. See, he is carrying, it is such a typical bait and switch by the far right. And he was supported by right-wing super PACs, by Robin Voss, by all these people. And now he went out, he was told that it was illegal for him to do it, and he carted off the absentee ballot drop box in downtown Wausau.
It's like the most, sorry, I have to take a minute. That is like the most literal form of voter suppression. He
No, you cannot do this.
Away a ballot box.
Took it upon himself. Now, this is what comes of a world where there's a lot of people who are in a kind of an information bubble. And that's what the right-wing propaganda machine does. There's Up North News, there's a ton of amazing work by different folks trying to get real information to people and counter these right-wing attacks at the same time as right-wing hedge funds are buying up TV stations and newspapers. There are new outlets and new networks. Up North News, the Civic Media Radio Network, the Wisconsin Independent, the Wisconsin Examiner. There's a bunch of stuff that people are doing to make sure that this bubble gets punctured and we have reality. But that information war is absolutely critical, and it extends at every level of the ballot. This is the first cycle for me where we've had a presidential and a statewide election for Tammy Baldwin against Eric Hovde at the same time, where we've had multiple House seats where we're fighting tooth and claw. In the 3rd congressional district, Rebecca Cook could flip that seat. She is 2 points up in a poll that was made public against Derek Van Orden, famous for screaming at teenagers, and also his presence on Capitol grounds on January 6th, 2021. We have in the 8th congressional district a pro-choice OBGYN woman, Dr. Kristen Lyerly, who is amazing. And it's a tough district in terms of the lines, but she is setting people on fire with her campaign. And then in the 1st, we have Peter Barca running against Brian Stile. Peter is just a beloved hometown hero in Kenosha and has served in Congress and the state assembly and the governor's cabinet, running against Paul Ryan's protege, Brian Stile, who's never seen an abortion ban he doesn't like. So we have these House races, and then we have fair maps in our state legislature, which is a generational opportunity. And those are right on a knife's edge. I mean, Wausau, that town where the drop box was carted away, that is in the tipping point district in the state assembly, in the 85th Assembly District in Wisconsin. If you look at it, it's the district most likely to make Democrats the majority party in our state assembly. Yileng Zhang is our amazing candidate there. He'd be the first Hmong state representative in Wisconsin history, and he's just a community leader for everyone in a way that has made him a beloved figure. But that could come down to, a couple hundred votes or less. And every level of the ballot, what happens in these little questions around, what propaganda people internalize from the right and how we fight back to ensure that people get access to the ballot and know the stakes in this election, it could affect the future of Wisconsin and the future of American democracy at every level of government.
Well, that was pretty compelling, Ben. And I'm serious, you're doing an amazing job. And one of the things you're doing, one of the great signatures of your tenure as chair, is you've been able to pull together people in the entertainment world and famous folks. And I know you've got a major event coming up this weekend. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm so excited about this. So Stephen Colbert is hosting a gathering of the original cast of Veep, the beloved TV show. And they're Julia Louis-Dreyfus leading the way. The whole crew is coming together to read the script from the episode where fictional Vice President Selena Mayer found out that she's going to be president of the United States. And if you've ever watched the show, the episode's called Crate. It is an episode that is hilarious. And, in the fictional world of the show, big changes to history happening. And, we're all experiencing these historic moments one after another here in the real world. So it's a kind of joyous, it'll be incredibly fun, joyous way to gather and celebrate a work of fiction that is so funny, but also a reminder that things can change on a dime. And we have the opportunity to make sure that all the changes to come are for the better. If you donate any amount, you can donate $1, you can donate $10,000, go to wisdems.org/Veep, VEEP, and any donation gets you an invitation to watch this live stream. It's this coming Sunday night. Whatever your time zone might be will affect exactly what time it is. But for me, it's 6:30 p.m. in Central Time. So I hope that everyone is able to join, and it's going to be such a blast.
That's so great. Well, we are so excited to watch that and are just excited to see everything you guys are doing on the ground. Your energy is so contagious, Ben. I love talking to you and hearing about this. And God, if every state could have you marketing them and pitching to get folks involved around the country, I think we'd be in a better place. But it's so lucky and grateful to have you there in Wisconsin, which is going to matter so much. So as you have been doing through this conversation, though, tell folks at home who don't live in Wisconsin or any of the core battleground states ways that they can get involved. And before you do that, I do want to touch on this. I meant to do it in our conversation with Julie too, but there is this sense of enthusiasm right now, and this is such a historic and such a consequential election when we've had consequential elections before. But this one really can transform the future direction of the country and the progressive movement in just so many ways. And it's palpable. You feel it a little bit. Of course, we know that has to translate into votes, but also I would not be so surprised to see really historic turnout numbers in states that aren't getting the level of resources or attention or aren't as competitive. But we do know that we have to get to the 270 plus electoral votes, and that does come down to states like Wisconsin. So what is your advice for folks across the country who are not in one of these absolutely consequential battleground states and what they can do in these last 5 weeks?
Well, we think a lot about Nancy Pelosi's, that her 3 M's and 3 No's. Her 3 M's are mobilization, message, and money. And the 3 No's are no wasted resources, no wasted time, and no regrets the day after the election. So what that means is you should look at your calendar and start thinking about what you can move to after the election instead of doing it before the election. There's every opportunity right now to sign up for WisDem's call phone banks. Our WisDem's call crew is doing calls day after day after day to voters in our state to make sure that they know that they can return their absentee ballot. Right now, we know who has their absentee ballots and who's returned them. We want to call folks and remind them to make sure that people know they can same day register at the polls. They can update their information right there at the polls if they bring the right identification and then cast a ballot. I mean, we can really have an impact with that work. You can, of course, travel to a swing state like Wisconsin if you're able to do that. You can also donate to ensure that we have the supplies and the support to increase the size of our ground game and operation. So wisdems.org/volunteers, how you sign up. Wisdems.org/donate is how you give. Wisdems.org/veep, you can give and go to the event. But that's true for each battleground state. So I want to emphasize, there are amazing chairs across the country. I know Anderson Clayton, I think, has joined you guys before in North Carolina. She's doing fantastic work. Lavora Barnes in Michigan, amazing. Liz Walters in Ohio, fighting the fight to re-elect Sherrod Brown and win state Supreme Court seats. Yoli Bejarano in Arizona. And I could go on with that list. These are great folks who are building the kinds of operations that can win close elections. So you can find your nearest swing state, get involved with the party, join the party where you are, because there are often underappreciated fights, even in bluer states and in redder states, where you can make a difference. You can break a Republican supermajority in your state legislature in Kansas and give Governor Laura Kelly a veto that is actually sustained. You can win Democratic supermajorities in Nevada and override the Republican governor's veto. That's also one state legislative seat in the state Senate that gets us there. So there are changes that can have huge ripple effects and consequences. And then, of course, House races are across the country. I do think it's worth keying into finding the underappreciated fights. Nebraska's U.S. Senate race, Dan Osborne, that is we are up by 1 point in a race that nobody's thinking about or talking about in the most recent poll. I think across the country, look for those bright spots, but at the same time, do donate and volunteer in the place in the I'd say Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania is the biggest, clearest path to ensuring that we lock Trump out of the White House and end his political career. We just have to win this election, and if we do that and we win the Senate and the U.S. House majorities, the sky's the limit for the kind of progress, the responsiveness to public calls for change that become possible. And I will just end with this. The down ballot consequences of the election this year will echo through the midterm elections and for years and years to come. And the thing about American politics right now is that the divisions that you see in the presidential races, they run down the ballot. So pretty much all of the battleground states have enormously consequential state legislative fights happening at the same time. Arizona is 1 seat away in each chamber from getting a Democratic trifecta, for example. So if we win the presidential race there, we could win a Democratic trifecta down ballot at the same time and really help the surge forward and make that state reflect the wishes and views of its population. In Wisconsin, we've talked about these fair maps. In Michigan, we have to hold the trifecta. Pennsylvania, 3 state Senate seats, we get a trifecta. Those unseen, undiscussed races affect people's lives for the next generation. So fill out your whole ballot and get involved in these races up and down the ticket. Work with the parties to do the work that affects every race that people are going to see when they walk into their polling place. And if we do all that, this year will become a momentous celebration of the promise of democracy. Instead of the year we're worried about it collapsing, it can become the year when we celebrate its revival.
Ben, you're amazing. I'm so glad to be on your team. It was fun to be out there with you a few months ago. It was great to see you in person.
Love having you.
I know.
I mean, that
Great.
was it. That's how we close strong. You just laid out the whole map and the whole
I
goal.
know. You
Fill out
did.
your
You did great.
entire ballot. Ben, thank you for everything that you do and the contagious energy and hard work that has a ripple effect across all of the states. It's such an honor to get to spend time with you. We are just sending you all of the good vibes to Wisconsin.
Bring it home, brother.
Thank you. Team effort. Let's go, team.
Well, thanks, everybody. This was an amazing episode. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. And I also just want to congratulate the Courier crew for also putting on a great event in DC this week. If you haven't been able to watch Tara's interview with Nancy Pelosi or my discussion with Tom Bonnier, do check it out. It's been a busy week here, but that's what it's election time. We got to leave it all on the playing field, even here at Closing Strong. Thanks, everybody, so much. See you next week.